People in our town used to say my family was blessed. We lived in a quiet suburb just outside Columbus, Ohio, the kind of place where lawns were always trimmed, neighbors waved every morning, and nobody locked their doors before sunset. My father, Richard Miller, worked as a regional sales manager for a construction supply company. My mother, Elaine, stayed home until I was 10, then took a part-time job at a local dental clinic. From the outside, we were the American dream. But perfection is often just a performance. I was born the middle child, too old to be protected like my younger sister, and too young to be respected like my older brother. That position taught me early how to stay quiet, how to observe, how to feel everything without showing it. My brother, Daniel, was my father's pride. Football captain, loud, confident, always winning. My sister, Emily, was my mother's miracle baby, born after 2 miscarriages. She could do no wrong. And then there was me, Sarah. I learned early that love in our house wasn't given equally. It was earned, and sometimes, it was withheld as punishment. My father believed in discipline the way soldiers believe in commands. He never hit us, but his silence could cut deeper than any slap. When he was disappointed, the house would go quiet. No laughter, no eye contact, just the sound of forks hitting plates during dinner. My mother tried to keep peace. She was gentle, nervous, always apologizing, even when she wasn't wrong. She would whisper to me at night, "Your father had a hard childhood. He doesn't know how to show love." As a child, I believed her. As an adult, I realized pain doesn't excuse damage. One memory still burns clearly in my mind. I was 12 years old, standing on a small stage in my middle school auditorium. I had practiced for weeks to play the piano at the spring recital. When my fingers touched the keys, my hands shook, but I kept going. When I finished, the room applauded. I searched the crowd for my parents. My mother was smiling through tears. My father wasn't clapping. In the car on the way home, he finally spoke. "You missed 3 notes. That was it. No, good job. No, I'm proud of you." That night, I learned a lesson I would carry into every relationship of my life. Being good is never enough if someone is looking for flaws. As I grew older, the cracks in our family widened. My parents argued in whispers at night, thinking we couldn't hear them. Money, work stress, my father's long business trips, my mother's growing anxiety. Sometimes she would sit at the kitchen table long after midnight, staring at nothing, twisting her wedding ring around her finger again and again. When I was 16, my father missed my birthday. He called the next day and said, "Work ran late." No apology, just an explanation, as if that made it acceptable. That same year, I found my mother crying in the laundry room. "What's wrong?" I asked. She wiped her face quickly and forced a smile. "Nothing, just tired." But I noticed something strange after that. My father started guarding his phone like it was a secret diary. He stepped outside to take calls. He smiled at messages he didn't share. And my mother started losing weight, not the healthy kind. The kind that comes from stress and fear. I didn't have proof, but I had a feeling. And feelings, when ignored, grow louder. College became my escape. I chose a university 3 hours away, far enough to breathe but close enough to visit when guilt pulled me back. Freedom felt intoxicating. For the first time, no one judged my worth based on perfection. That's where I met Mark. He was everything my father wasn't: warm, attentive, emotionally open. He listened when I spoke. He remembered small details. He told me I mattered even when I failed. That should have been my first warning. Because when you grow up starving for love, you don't question the first person who feeds you. We married 5 years later. My parents sat in the front row, smiling for photos. My father hugged me and said, "You chose well." I believed him. I believed we were starting fresh. I believed the past was behind us. But family patterns don't disappear. They wait. And quietly, they repeat themselves. I didn't know it yet, but the same silence that ruled my childhood was about to enter my marriage. The same secrets, the same emotional distance, the same betrayal, only this time, it wouldn't be my parents' story. It would be mine. Marriage didn't fall apart all at once. It happened quietly, slowly, in ways that were easy to excuse and dangerous to ignore. During the first year, Mark was still the man I fell in love with. He brought me coffee in bed on Sundays. He texted me during work just to say he missed me. When I had nightmares, something I'd carried from childhood, he would pull me close and whisper, "I've got you." We moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Indianapolis. Nothing fancy, but it felt like home because it was ours. I decorated the walls with framed quotes about love and resilience. Mark joked that our place looked like a Pinterest board. I laughed, believing we were building something unbreakable. But love doesn't disappear, it erodes. Mark started working longer hours at the marketing firm. At first, I was proud of him. Ambition looked good on him. Then late nights became normal. Weekend emails replaced date nights. His phone was always face down, a detail so small I ignored it. Until I couldn't. When I asked how his day was, his answers shortened. Fine, busy, tired. Conversations turned into exchanges of information, not emotion. Bills, groceries, schedules. One evening, while washing dishes, I said quietly, "I miss you." He didn't look up from his phone. "I'm right here." But he wasn't. That sentence, "I'm right here," became his shield. As if physical presence replaced emotional connection. I started questioning myself. Was I needy? Was this what adulthood looked like? I called my mother once, searching for reassurance. She paused before answering. Marriage takes patience. I wanted to ask her, how much patience is too much? But I didn't. Instead, I learned to swallow disappointment. I smiled when friends posted anniversary trips and surprise gifts online. I told myself comparison was poison. I told myself every couple struggled. Then came the small lies. Mark said he was stuck in traffic. I saw his car parked outside 20 minutes later. Mark said he forgot to reply. I saw him active online. Mark said a female coworker was just part of the team. He mentioned her name more than anyone else. Her name was Lena. She's married, he added quickly once, as if that erased concern. I didn't want to be the jealous wife. I didn't want to sound like my mother, nervous and apologetic. So I ignored the pit in my stomach. But intuition is a language we learn too late. The first real crack came on our third anniversary. I planned dinner at the restaurant where we had our first date. I dressed carefully. I even rehearsed what I wanted to say, how I wanted us to reconnect. Mark arrived late. No apology. During dinner, his phone buzzed twice. He flipped it face down quickly. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, work." He didn't notice I barely touched my food. On the drive home, I finally said it. "I feel like I'm losing you." He sighed, frustrated. "Why do you always make problems when there aren't any?" That sentence felt familiar. It sounded like my father. That night, we slept facing opposite walls. Something inside me broke quietly. I started overcompensating, cooking more, complimenting him, avoiding conflict. I thought if I became easier to love, he'd come back. Instead, he pulled further away. One afternoon, while folding laundry, his phone buzzed on the bed. He was in the shower. I wasn't trying to snoop. I told myself that repeatedly, but the message preview lit up the screen. "Lena, I can't stop thinking about last night." My hands went cold. I didn't open the message. I didn't need to. My body already knew what my mind wasn't ready to accept. When Mark came out, towel around his waist, I held up the phone. "Who is Lena to you?" He froze. Just for a second, but that second told me everything. "It's not what you think," he said. Every betrayed spouse hears that sentence. He explained it away: emotional support, work stress, harmless conversations. He said I was reading into it. He said nothing physical had happened. I wanted to believe him. Because believing him was easier than starting over. So I stayed. But trust, once cracked, never sounds the same when it breaks. I started checking timestamps, watching behavior, noticing patterns. He grew defensive, private, irritated, and then one night, while cleaning out our shared laptop for storage, I found something he forgot to delete. An email thread, hotel reservations, 2 names, 1 room, a date that wasn't ours. The silence in my childhood home came rushing back. The quiet punishment, the secrets, the lies wrapped in explanations. I realized something terrifying. I hadn't escaped my family's story. I had recreated it, and this time, I was the woman sitting at the kitchen table at midnight, twisting a wedding ring, pretending everything was fine. But part 3 would change everything. Because denial can only survive until the truth demands to be seen, there's a moment when denial dies. It doesn't scream, it doesn't shatter dramatically, it simply stops working. For me, that moment came at 1:17 a.m. on a Tuesday night. Mark was asleep beside me, breathing evenly, one arm flung across the bed like nothing in the world was wrong. His phone vibrated softly on the nightstand. He never left it there, never. My heart started racing before my mind could catch up. I told myself not to look. I looked. "Lena, I miss you. I hate pretending at work. That was it. No ambiguity. No room for excuses. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the screen until my vision blurred. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I didn't wake him. I didn't cry. I just sat there, silent, the way I had learned to be as a child. In the morning, I confronted him. No soft questions. No gentle tone. Are you having an affair? He rubbed his face, exhausted, annoyed, not ashamed. It's complicated. That answer was worse than a confession. He admitted it slowly, like pulling teeth. It had started emotionally. Late conversations. Complaints about life. Feeling understood. Then dinners. Then a hotel room after a conference. I never meant to hurt you, he said. But he did. Repeatedly. On purpose. I asked him one question that had haunted me since childhood. Was I not enough? He didn't answer. Silence has a sound when you're waiting for love. He said he wanted to work things out. He said it was a mistake. He said he loved me. But his eyes kept drifting to his phone, as if part of him was already gone. I told him I needed space. I packed a small bag and drove to my parents' house. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same driveway. The same front door. The same feeling of walking back into a place that never protected me. My mother opened the door and took one look at my face. Oh, Sarah, she didn't ask questions. She just hugged me, and for the first time in years, she didn't apologize for someone else's behavior. My father sat in his chair, watching the news. He barely turned around. What happened? He asked flatly. He cheated on me. He nodded once. Figures. That word hit harder than I expected. Figures. As if betrayal was normal. As if pain was expected. As if this was just how marriages ended. That night, my mother sat beside me in my childhood bedroom. The same bed. The same walls. Different heartbreak. He promised me it would stop, she said quietly. I looked at her. What? Her eyes filled with tears. Your father. Years ago. The truth landed like a second betrayal. She told me everything. The late calls. The emotional distance. The woman from work. The apologies. The decision to stay, for the kids. And suddenly, my entire childhood made sense. The silence. The anxiety. The constant feeling of walking on eggshells. She had taught me endurance, not boundaries. I stayed at my parents' house for 2 weeks. Mark texted, called, apologized, promised therapy, promised transparency, promised change. Promises are easy when you're afraid of losing comfort. I went back home, not because I trusted him, but because I was terrified of starting over. We tried counseling. He attended, half-hearted, defensive, blaming stress, work, lack of connection. He never blamed himself fully. And then came the moment that ended everything. I ran into Lena at the grocery store. She recognized me instantly. I didn't know you were his wife, she said. That was a lie. She knew. I saw it in her eyes. I'm sorry, she added. But he told me you were basically separated. That night, I confronted Mark again. He didn't deny it. Something inside me hardened. I realized the truth I had been avoiding. Love without respect is just control wearing a soft voice. I asked him to leave. For the first time in my life, I didn't stay quiet. I didn't beg. I didn't minimize my pain to make someone else comfortable. I watched him pack a bag and walk out the door. And I felt something unexpected. Relief. But relief was only the beginning. Because part 4 would bring consequences I wasn't prepared for, from family, friends, and myself. People say divorce is between two people. That's a lie. Divorce is a public event disguised as a private decision. The moment Mark moved out, the world found out. Not because I announced it, but because silence always invites speculation. Friends noticed he wasn't around. Family asked questions disguised as concern. Social media kept showing me smiling couples like a cruel joke. Everyone had an opinion, and most of them weren't on my side. Mark told his version first. He said we grew apart. He said I was emotionally distant. He said the affair was a mistake, but the marriage was already broken. People believe the story that makes them most comfortable. Some friends stopped calling, others offered advice I never asked for. Marriage is hard. All men make mistakes. At least he didn't leave you for her. As if betrayal had acceptable levels. The hardest reactions came from family. My father surprised me. I think you're overreacting, he said one night at dinner. People mess up. You don't throw away a marriage over feelings. Feelings. The same word he used to dismiss everything that made him uncomfortable. My mother stayed quiet. Too quiet. I could tell she wanted me to stay married, not because it was right, but because leaving would force her to confront her own choices. Do you really want to start over at your age? She asked gently. I was 34, as if my life was already over. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment closer to work. It was quiet, empty, peaceful in a way that felt unnatural at first. I slept on the floor for the first week because I couldn't bring myself to buy furniture for a life I wasn't sure I deserved yet. Nights were the worst. I replayed every conversation, every ignored red flag, every moment I chose comfort over truth. I wondered if I had somehow caused this. If I had loved better, been easier, needed less. That voice sounded exactly like my mother's. And my father's. Mark continued reaching out, sometimes apologetic, sometimes angry, sometimes nostalgic. You're making this harder than it needs to be. That sentence told me everything. Harder for him, not for me. The legal process began quietly. Paperwork, forms, meetings with lawyers who spoke in neutral tones about assets and timelines, as if this wasn't the dissection of my life. Friends I thought would support me disappointed me. Others surprised me. One coworker, a woman named Rachel, sat with me during lunch one day and said, "You don't owe anyone your suffering." I cried in the bathroom afterward. Because no one had ever told me that before. I started therapy. At first, I talked about Mark. The betrayal, the anger, the humiliation. Then the therapist asked, "When did you first learn that your needs were a problem?" The answer came instantly. Childhood. Everything connected back. I realized I didn't just marry Mark because I loved him. I married him because he felt familiar. Emotionally unavailable. Dismissive when confronted. Loving just enough to keep me trying. I wasn't broken. I was repeating what I was taught. That realization hurt more than the affair. The final blow came during a family gathering. My aunt pulled me aside and whispered, "If you forgive him, this can all go away." I looked around the room, at the forced smiles, the polite conversations, the way everyone avoided eye contact with me. They didn't want truth. They wanted comfort. And my pain made them uncomfortable. That night, alone in my apartment, I made a decision that terrified me. I stopped trying to explain myself. I stopped defending my choice. I chose myself, without permission. But choosing yourself has consequences. And in part 5, I would learn how lonely independence can feel, and how strong it can make you. Loneliness doesn't arrive dramatically. It settles in quietly, like dust you don't notice until it covers everything. The first weeks after the separation felt unreal. I woke up expecting Mark's presence, the sound of the shower, the clink of his coffee mug. Instead, there was silence. Thick, unforgiving. At night, I sat on the edge of my bed and wondered if I had made a terrible mistake. Freedom is heavy when you're not used to carrying it. I started doing things alone, grocery shopping, eating out, walking through parks. I noticed couples everywhere, holding hands, laughing, planning futures. I felt invisible standing next to their happiness. Some days, I almost called Mark. Not because I missed him, but because I missed being known. That scared me. Therapy became my anchor. Week by week, I peeled back layers I didn't know existed. My therapist said something that stayed with me. You confuse abandonment with peace. She was right. Chaos felt familiar. Silence felt wrong. I began rewriting small habits. I cooked meals just for myself. I rearranged my apartment. I bought a couch, the first real piece of furniture that belonged only to me. Sitting on it felt like claiming territory in my own life. Mark tried one last time. He showed up unannounced one evening, standing outside my apartment with regret written all over his face. "I made a mistake," he said. "We can still fix this." I looked at him and felt nothing. No anger, no longing, just clarity. "You didn't lose me when you cheated," I said quietly. "You lost me when you made me feel small for wanting honesty." He left without arguing. That was the moment I knew I was healing. But healing isn't linear. There were setbacks. Nights I cried without knowing why. Moments I doubted myself when bills piled up and decisions felt heavy. Independence demanded responsibility, emotional and financial. Still, something inside me grew stronger. I started reconnecting with people I had neglected. Old friends, coworkers, myself. I signed up for a weekend hiking group. The first time, I almost backed out. I stood in front of the mirror, judging my reflection the way I always had. Then I went anyway. Nature didn't care about my divorce. The trees didn't judge my past. With every step, I felt grounded, like I was slowly returning to myself. One afternoon, my mother called. "I'm proud of you," she said. It was the first time she had ever said that without hesitation. I realized something important then. By choosing myself, I had given her permission to question her own silence. Not everyone would grow with me. But some would. And that was enough. By the end of that year, the divorce was finalized. No dramatic courtroom scene, just signatures. Finality. I walked out of the building holding papers that represented the end of one life, and the beginning of another. I didn't know yet who I was becoming. But I knew one thing for certain. I would never abandon myself again. Part 6 would be about redemption, not through love, but through self-respect. And it would change everything. Healing doesn't feel like happiness at first. It feels like space. Space to breathe, space to think, space to decide who you want to be when no one is watching. After the divorce, I expected relief to look like celebration. Instead, it arrived quietly, in ordinary moments. Morning coffee without anxiety, evenings without waiting for someone who might not come home. Silence that felt safe instead of punishing. For the first time in my life, silence wasn't something I had to survive. It was something I chose. I stopped explaining my story to people who didn't deserve it. I stopped defending my decisions to those who benefited from my silence. I learned that peace doesn't need witnesses. I also learned something uncomfortable. Some people only loved me when I was small. When I stopped being convenient, they called it selfish. I accepted that. My relationship with my parents changed. My father never apologized. He didn't need to. His discomfort said enough. We spoke less, but when we did, I no longer shrank. I didn't seek approval that was never freely given. My mother changed more than I expected. One evening, she admitted, "Watching you leave made me realize how much of myself I gave up." She didn't leave her marriage. But she stopped disappearing inside it. That mattered. As for Mark, he faded. Not dramatically, not bitterly, just quietly. I heard through mutual friends that he eventually left the company. That Lena didn't stay. That he was starting over. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt closure. Life continued. I advanced at work, took risks I would have avoided before. I spoke up in meetings. I trusted my instincts, the same instincts I once silenced. I dated again, slowly, carefully. Not searching for rescue, but for connection. And for the first time, I recognized red flags without trying to repaint them green. The biggest shift wasn't external. It was internal. I stopped asking, "Am I enough?" I started asking, "Is this enough for me?" That question changed everything. 1 year after the divorce, I returned to my parents' house for a holiday dinner. The same table, the same walls, but I wasn't the same person. When the conversation turned uncomfortable, I didn't swallow my words. I spoke calmly, clearly, without apology. No one interrupted me. Respect feels different when it's earned from yourself first. That night, lying in my old bedroom, I realized something profound. The cycle ended with me. The silence, the tolerance, the quiet suffering passed down like inheritance. It stopped here. This wasn't just a story about betrayal. It was a story about choosing yourself, even when it costs you comfort, approval, and familiarity. Especially then, if you're listening to this and recognizing yourself, in the excuses, in the fear, in the quiet pain, know this. You are not too late. You are not too old. You are not asking for too much. You are asking the wrong people. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't staying. It's leaving, with dignity.